Welcome to The Connector, where we connect North Carolina to ideas and North Carolinians to each other. This podcast series is from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. And now to the conversation.
Welcome to The Connector. I'm your host, Jessica Solis Aguilar, Policy and Program Manager with the Institute for Emerging Issues at NC State University. Today's episode focuses on one of the most critical and often overlooked challenges facing North Carolina's water systems, the workforce behind them. This past February, IEI hosted our Future Forward Water Forum across 3 different regions across the state, bringing together local leaders to explore the future of the water infrastructure and its workforce. One of the standout sessions that we had held in Asheville, Winston-Salem, and Morehead City was The Next Wave, Investing in the Water Workforce. This conversation highlighted a growing reality. The systems we rely on every day depend on the skilled workforce that is aging out, shrinking, and becoming increasingly difficult to replace. I'm excited to be joined today by 3 of the panelists that were at one of these 3 locations: Daniel Manring, Perry Harker, and Bill Frazier. Welcome, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So, as we heard throughout the forum, access to clean, reliable water depends on hundreds of skilled professionals from water operators, engineers, lab technicians, maintenance crews, etc. But across North Carolina, utilities are being faced with a workforce crunch. Many experienced professionals are nearing retirement, while our systems are becoming more complex due to the aging infrastructure, the stricter regulations, and more frequent extreme weather events. At the same time, smaller and rural systems are struggling to recruit and retain this talent, often competing with larger utilities and the private industry. Today, we'll explore how these challenges are showing up across the state and, more importantly, what it will take to build the next generation of water professionals. So, Daniel, I'd like to start with you. You were at our Asheville Forum location. You spoke about workforce challenges from a utility leadership perspective. I'd love to zoom out a bit. What did you hear from the others in the Western region about workforce challenges? And are there particular issues like retirement, certification barriers, or competition for talent that feel especially pronounced in Western North Carolina compared to other parts of the state?
Thank you, Jessica. I'm Daniel Manring. I'm the Executive Director of the Tuckaseegee Water and Sewer Authority. We're located in the mountains, as you just suggested, about 50 miles west of Asheville. So thanks again for having me. So to answer your first question was, what did I hear in the room from others? And I think the most shocking thing I heard was surprise. It's something that a lot of people in the room, you had economic development folks, you had some elected officials, you had people that were not in water. And I thought that was great because eyebrows went up and they didn't really understand until they heard it from us what our struggles were. And I communicated that our organization had over 50% of our entire staff has retired in the last 6 years. We've had some other vacancies for other reasons as well. So, the turnover, and mostly because of retirements, is staggering. And so the common theme of feedback after our session was just like, wow, I had no idea. Another shocking thing I heard was it was a lady, I wish I caught her name, but we talked a lot about, trying to get people in the industry and communicating to schools, students of all different levels of academia, of what, how can we make water jobs important? And she raised her hand and said, well, what do they need to do to prepare for these jobs? I always thought that careers in water had to be like engineers, and blew my mind. I never thought that was what people that aren't in water thought. And it really made sense. Oftentimes people don't think about water careers. And then if they do, they think that somebody has to go out and become an engineer to be involved in water. And so it was really, I think, great that I was able to communicate that, oh no, this is an industry. There are careers for people that have degrees and engineers, but there are tons of careers that all you need is a high school diploma, and then the industry, will pay for the certifications, the trainings, and the ability to get the licenses. So that was a really good takeaway from the group and kind of surprised me. It was eye-opening, what people did or didn't know. The second part of your question, I hope I don't sound like I'm rambling, was what are the particular issues maybe in our region? And that's an interesting question. I don't know that a lot of people in North Carolina know that it takes like 4.5 to 5 hours to get to Raleigh from where I am. So you can also go an hour and a half west of where I am. So the state keeps going. I would say that it's particular to Western North Carolina. It really just boils down to being rural. So I don't think it's a Western or Eastern thing. It's about we had the same struggles as the rest of the state, that like for a water exam, they only offer 4 of those a year. So everybody deals with that. I will say that from a training standpoint, we might have to travel more than a lot of folks in the state to attend a training. Unfortunately, on the water side, and I'll kind of go back and forth between water and wastewater, but on the water side, at least they offer remote. Like you can do most of those trainings online to get a water certification for drinking water. But in wastewater, you have to do it in person. So if there's not a school offered in Western North Carolina, then we're sending folks to Raleigh. On the flip side, there just was a school for wastewater biological level 3. So as you get on up in the tiers of those certifications, they just have one in Haywood County right next door to us. And there were folks that had to come all the way from the eastern part of the state to attend. So there is that struggle, just the not being close to most of the people in the state presents challenges for the training piece. Other than that, though, nothing particular to Western North Carolina.
Yeah. And you talked about, the misconception of people thinking that you have to be some kind of engineer to be a water professional. What do you think is the disconnect there?
I don't think we've never been cheerleaders for ourselves. It really boils down to I feel like our industry's not done a really good job of communicating how many careers and how great of careers there are. I mean, there's no relationship, at least locally, with our organization and the high schools or the 7th grade classrooms. And I think we might have taken it for granted that 30 years ago, we got some really good dedicated employees, and we didn't do too good of a job of thinking about when they all retired. And here we are.
Very fair. Well, I want to move on to Perry and ask you, during your session, you were in Morehead City. You talked about the training programs and the workforce pipeline. Thinking more broadly about the eastern part of the state, what did you hear from communities and partners about their workforce needs? And are there unique challenges and opportunities in coastal or more rural areas when it comes to recruiting, training, retaining the next generation of water professionals?
Yes, thank you, Jessica, and thank you for this opportunity to speak on this very important topic again. What I heard consistently across Eastern North Carolina is that workforce needs in the water sector are both urgent and evolving. They're also very local. From our communities and partners, a few things I think really stood out. First, we're facing a pipeline challenge. Many of our experienced operators, it was said many times, are nearing retirement, and there simply aren't enough younger workers coming in behind them. And that's not just a numbers issue, it's a knowledge transfer issue too, because if we wait, for all those workers to retire and recruit new ones in, we're losing that really institutional knowledge and certainly industry knowledge that a lot of our workers that have been in this field for a long time. So we risk losing decades of institutional experience if we don't act intentionally. Second was an awareness that awareness itself was a major barrier. In many of our rural and coastal communities, students and even adults just don't know water careers exist or that they offer stable, well-paying, meaningful work. They're careers that protect public health and support economic development, but they just aren't visible. The third thing that I think sort of a thing I wanted to address was that we heard a lot about access and geography, and in more rural parts, and particularly here in the East, getting to training can be a real obstacle. Transportation, distance, and even broadband limitations can make it harder for people to engage in traditional training models that forces us as educators from a community college standpoint to think differently about how we deliver that instruction. I spoke a little bit about our partnership with NC Water One, where we bring a annual wastewater school to Morehead City, but that involves operators traveling from all over the state here. They enjoy the weather and the location, but again, it involves a lot of traveling for a lot of the different municipalities to send their employees here to Morehead City for what is really some excellent training. But along with those challenges, we talked about some opportunities, especially in regions like ours in the East. One of the biggest is the strength of partnerships. I heard strong interest from utilities, local governments, and community colleges to work more closely together to create an opportunity for more earn and learn models. For example, we spoke some on apprenticeships, internships, and really embedding training that allows people to enter the field while they're learning. And that has proven to be a very good model in other industry sectors. And I think it would be a good model in this sector too. There's also an opportunity to start earlier in the pipeline. So our K-12 system, especially, not only CTE programs, they can play a much bigger role in introducing students to water careers, but also starting even much younger with industry fairs in the elementary schools and certainly middle schools, and obviously the high schools to introduce students to the opportunities that are available in this industry. When students see a clear local pathway from high school to a credential to a job, they're much more likely to stay in the region. And that is one of our key things in Carteret County is we want to create opportunities for our students who graduate from our public schools to stay here and work and earn a good living. And in a coastal area especially, there's unique opportunities to connect this work to community partners. So water professionals here aren't just doing a job, they're protecting our environment, our fisheries, our tourism economy, which is big for us, and our quality of life. That purpose can be a powerful recruitment tool if we tell the story. And that's what we've got to do is tell the story of the opportunities in this industry. Finally, I'll say retention came up just as much as recruitment. So smaller systems in rural areas often struggle to compete on salary. So we have to think about retention differently. Career pathways, focusing on that, upskilling, additional training, supportive work environments, and helping employees see a future where they are. That will help. We have seen in other industries with the retention issue. So at the end of the day, the message I took away is this, that if we're willing to meet people where they are, build flexible training models, strengthen our partnerships, we can turn what looks like a workforce shortage into a workforce strategy. And that will mean engaging all educational systems, K-12, community colleges, and universities. All three need to better understand this industry and the career opportunities that are available in this industry.
Thank you. And I wanted to kind of touch back on when you talk about how do we entice the younger generation to be interested in these this kind of profession? How do we get them to see the benefits from these kind of jobs and see a bright future? I used to work at a high school, and it's so interesting working with young adults on how they consider what their future can look like. I know you, Perry, have done some work in that realm, as well as you, Daniel. Would either of you kind of chime in? Like, what are some strategies that you've done or are thinking about to entice younger generation to consider a career in water profession?
One thing is we have to tell our story, and students are looking for unique opportunities. I mean, and again, if you never hear about the water industry throughout high school, when all of these different industries come before them and talk about the great opportunities that they have, and students don't know about it. I think what I see is if it's a clear pathway that you can take these courses. Here's the job that you can obtain, and here's the advancement opportunities, a career opportunity that would be available there. And again, it would be local. Um, I mean, it's just a great career, and we need to tell that story. And I think when students hear that, it'd be an opportunity for them to certainly learn more about it and hopefully engage in pursuing employment in that industry.
And I'll add to that. So yes, the students need to hear that we're there, right? And they need to hear the opportunities that are there. But I also think that they need to hear the impact it has on your community. So that's something. There's a lot of people that are helpful, and just by nature. And when you tap into that, I'll use tap because that's another water reference. But if you can tap into that helpfulness and communicate what the water industry contributes to the community. I mean, without community, what are you? So I feel like it's getting in front of the students, and then it's also making our industry and what they would do within it important, not just for them, not just because we can provide a great career to them, but let them get a little taste of the piece that matters to the community. I think that really grabs a hold of people once they think about it, but they've got to be, somebody's got to make them think about it. So.
Right. And look, I would add that students do have an environmental awareness, and this industry is protecting our environment, and we probably don't tell that side of it as much. But I know here our fisheries and again our tourism industry are just this is critical to us. And if you have if a student has an environmental awareness of that and an interest, this is an industry where you can kind of live out that dream.
Absolutely. I want to shift to you, Bill. You were at our Winston-Salem Forum location, and you highlighted the importance of laboratory and technical roles. From your conversations at the forum, what stood out to you about workforce challenges in the Piedmont or more urbanized parts of the state? And are there differences in how workforce shortages show up in larger or more resourced systems versus smaller ones?
There really are, simply because of compensation. I know when I came into the professional environment, there was a very hard push to say that salaries didn't matter, satisfaction did. That's gone. Newsflash. Just the changing of generational differences and everything else. I have two ways of motivating my people: money, which I have almost no control over, and food. So, you even see things in management forums now about the pizza party's about dead. You need more salary. So in larger systems that are more funded, yes, they come across pretty good. The smaller ones, and especially the very small ones, the rural communities really struggle. I do think that the manager, the person that's dealing with this, should really think very hard about their role and take a little more personal responsibility about what they can bring to it, and focus a little more on their people skill training than their technical training. The other side of that is what I brought up in Winston-Salem, which is a little bit of a simple example, but that of the first day of kindergarten, when the teacher asked what everybody wants to grow up and be, there was somebody that said doctor, and there was lawyer, and there may have been a teacher. There wasn't a single person in there that said anything about working in the water and wastewater industry. And I've been out of kindergarten 63 years. We hadn't done anything to change that yet, because I do spend a lot of time in schools and colleges and things like that. I don't really, and especially with the STEM things, I agree we've got great non-degree program opportunities for electricians, people with plumbing skills, first one thing, then another. Heavy equipment operators. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues we have recruiting, is because they come in here and they get their training and their certification, they're gone. I mean, it's a revolving door. But on the STEM side, this is a much bigger systemic problem that I'm not really sure. We've been screaming about STEM education since I got out of college, which is over 40 years ago. Nothing's changing. So, even with the engagement, somewhere that child that started in kindergarten is not getting the information they need or the challenge to look at something in a science field that's going to direct them where we need them. And it gets tougher and tougher every single day.
I want to pose the question based off kind of that response. What do each of you think it's going to take for something to change?
I hate to dominate, but frankly, it's going to have to happen. I don't necessarily think the education system is to blame here. I think that there's probably an overall. I hate to use the word cultural issue, but when this is not a job you can do on your phone. It's not a computer. It's not on the internet. You have to stand and do tests. That's not popular with younger people. There's nothing there that in our media or anything else that pushes them towards, yeah, it's okay. This is a good path to go to. So that's where the fulcrum is. It's got to change at that level. We got to find something to get in front of those young people and say, this is a really cool thing to do. It's very challenging. It's very rewarding. It's pretty decent salaries. So,
I agree with telling that story, and because that is very important. It does describe the opportunities here. I think from an educational institution, we've got to be intentional about growing these programs locally and promoting. I mean, we're seeing that with our trades programs. I think 4 or 5 years ago, they were not big in our area. We had small trades programs. Now with the number of houses that are being built in our community, we've really um, beefed up the equipment, the recruitment. I mean, we're just intentional about making sure that young people and those that are looking for work understand that these opportunities exist in the construction trades. I think we've got to do the same thing for this industry because I mean they're very similar. I would say career paths and jobs, and actually, with the water, you may in most cases end up with the municipality where there really is a career opportunity and retirement opportunity there too. But we just gotta. It's a issue, and we've got to really be intentional and focused on making sure that we address it and help students understand what this opportunity presents. You're right. I mean, you hear a lot, and we had a question at our forum about AI and that sort of thing. But this is one of those industries where AI I mean, you may use it in some of your research and that sort of thing, but you've got to get your hands on the equipment to fix it. I mean, AI cannot do that.
Just so you get a third answer, I think I'm going to lean in on what Perry said earlier. I think one thing as you're analyzing this issue is tapping into something that people relate to now, and that environmental piece that you spoke to a little bit ago. You're right. There's a lot of people that are environmentally minded, and we have to connect. That you can do lots of things for the environment, but this is a tangible way with a great career that comes along with it. So I think that's another key piece to lean in on.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind, I'm going to drop one more little thought here because I did at the Winston-Salem Forum. What I threw out there was rebranding. You say something to those kids in kindergarten about working in a water and wastewater plant, they don't know what you're talking about. But the bottom line is we're going to have to focus a little bit more on how crucial we really are. I mean, you get sick, you go to a doctor. Here, the doctor, the police, nobody stays unless there's water. What is it, 3 days without fresh, clean, safe water? And you can't stay someplace. I still think that there's a pathway for us finding a marketing approach as a public health professional, not a medical professional. I even saw a billboard on 85 down about Salisbury. It said something. It was by one of the local health departments talking about public health professionals and displaying the different jobs that they did in the health department, first one thing and another. I don't want to rob their glory, but there's got to be something there for us to elevate ourselves and make it look more appealing.
Yeah. I remember at one of the locations, I heard someone say, we we think about first responders and we think about what kind of professionals are in that kind of what kind of professionals come to mind in that kind of field, but why don't we consider water professionals in that same category? When a storm hits, when a natural disaster hits, they are also the ones that have to come out. Otherwise, we won't get access to clean water. I remember when Tropical Storm Chantal hit the Piedmont, that was what was coming out news of, you know, this different water systems that were failing, and somebody had to come and make sure that those things were fixed after that storm to make sure that people had access to that clean water. So I remember hearing that conversation, and that kind of stuck with me. Maybe it is that we have to reconsider what first responders are and include our water professionals in that.
Just real quick note there, the city of High Point has already proposed that for council in our next budget year for our water, wastewater, our maintenance, and our operators to bring them up to the same status as police and fire, which will require certifications that they have to get. So it is something actively we are doing.
That's awesome. So I know we're close to wrapping up, but I'd love to just open up for a quick reflection. At the forum, each of you were asked about the challenges and based off your specific role. After listening to the conversation, are there common themes that you're seeing across the different regions? And also, where did you see or where do you notice the biggest chance for opportunity?
I'll just jump in. I think the neat thing to hear is that we all have very similar issues. I mean, big or small. I mean, there's some things, rural and urban, that make things harder or easier. But we are all in this together. But we don't have a unified front to put up the billboard. So if we've got the same issues, I mean, some kind of measure, and I don't know who needs to lead that measure, but I guess we're all asking that something can do something on a larger scale, because while we are all alone, it's the same industry and the same problem. So that was my takeaway. Is it was it didn't make me feel better that our next door neighbor is struggling also, but it made me think that, hey, if enough of us are voices, that we can come up with a collective way to approach making water more important and more of a daily conversation. I mean, maybe we do need a public works day or a water, like, I don't even think, a lot of times we're not even considered in the public works discussion. We're just like, you had COVID and we weren't essential, not at least until we begged to be. I had to write a letter so that my employees, our employees, could go to work because they didn't have a nurse badge and they weren't police or fire. I thought it was ridiculous. So we're the ones providing the water, but we're not essential. So like we can be our own cheerleaders, but we need some people to listen too and consider water important. So that was my good and bad takeaway.
My takeaway, I guess, would be that we're all facing pipeline challenges. We need workers, and it's just not in numbers, but in awareness and preparedness. A few common themes that I remember was recruitment is a shared struggle everywhere. We all are having, whether urban or rural, we're competing for talent against other industries. And many potential workers simply don't know the water careers exist or how to access them. I mentioned earlier about the construction industry and others that manufacturing others. We're just competing for the same, in many cases, the same person. Second, there seems to be a consistent need for stronger training to employment alignment. So not just training, but really showing that person that we're training that here's the job opportunity for you. So employers are looking for job-ready individuals. I heard you mention not only the skill piece, but also soft skills. Good customer service and good work-ready skills, showing up, work on time, that sort of thing. But we don't always need to have these systems move so fast enough or connect directly to workforce demands. They need to. The gap shows up across every region. So we're all looking for stronger training and employment alignment. And retention appeared to be just as critical. I mean, as recruitment. So retention seem to be just as critical as recruitment. Again, because we're seeing aging workforce, and in many cases, the next generation isn't entering fast enough to replace those retiring. So that creates both risk and urgency. And certainly there was a big difference in geography and scale. In more rural and coastal areas like where I am, we experience here in Eastern North Carolina, the challenges are amplified. We have smaller populations that mean a limited labor pool. It's harder to build training programs at scale. And I think, one of the questions I had was, suppose you only have 2 or 3 individuals that want to take the training. Is a college going to run a program with that small number of potential students? We've all said transportation, getting to training, access to training is a big barrier too. And it certainly is in our area because we're not centrally located where a lot of this happens. But at the same time, those areas also presented unique opportunities because partnerships tend to be stronger and more personal because we are smaller, and a lot of these educational institutions, employers, and local governments are already working together. We just need to be intentional about this industry, and I think we can move quickly and build very targeted pipelines. In essence, the challenge is shared, but the solutions have to be collective and localized in some instances, but we got to work together. As one of you said, we don't have a voice to put up billboards and help us recruit. And we've got to find a way to come together collaboratively and tell the story, the great opportunities, that story of this industry. And hopefully that will lead to, individuals learning more about it and wanting to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Bill, anything you'd like to close us out with?
I agree with everything both people said, and I don't mean for it to sound elitist, but these lab positions that are required here that must have a college degree are a little bit different pathway. And I'll be fair, I've worked for a long time in this job, and I've never really seen a successful way to intervene to get them in the pipeline. I just haven't. I spend a lot of time studying it. I think lifestyle issues is probably one of the biggest challenges that I've tried to take on is what's it going to get them to look this way? And one of the things that I've seen consistently across the board is in larger cities where you have more opportunities for living diversity, for entertainment diversity, anything like that, they can get people. One of these little small communities where basically you got a bluegrass dance once every month at the local, theater, they're going to struggle a lot more. So even collectively, we've still got to focus in on that little fine hair there. I don't have a lot of suggestions, really.
Well, thank you all for providing your reflection, the conversations that were talked about at each forum location. I know there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but we're hoping that we can continue amplifying the need and raising awareness with all the workforce challenges. So thank you just for joining us and helping bring these regional conversations together. It's clear that while North Carolina's water challenges have differences and similarities from the coast to the mountains, the solutions are going to require collaboration, coordination, and a shared vision for the future. So for our audience to learn more about IEI's Future Forward Water Work and what's next, you can visit emergingissues.org. And until next time, let's all stay connected. Thank you.
This has been a presentation from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. To learn more, please visit us at emergingissues.org.